The definition of addiction is that in spite of everything that you want and in spite of every effort you can put to it, you are trapped. Addiction is bondage. Essentially, what we're working with are women and people in pain. Avoiding that pain and running from that pain is what leads people into addiction. Connection and facing that pain, facing ourselves and our demons and the things we've run from are what treatment is all about. Sobriety is stopping using drugs or alcohol. Recovery is creating a whole new life.
My name is Amy Daschel, and this is my story of hope. I am a woman who has lived through some darkness, and I am just trying to navigate this crazy path of life. I've got a 21-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. I'm a full-time student up at the University of Utah, just finishing up my master's degree in social work. I'm just a person trying to make a difference, however small that may be. That's really all I want to be. I'm a woman in long-term recovery. What that means to me is that I haven't found it necessary to use a drink or a drug since August 23rd, 2017. I've experienced a lot. I've been humbled by my experiences, and I'm super grateful for those experiences to be able to help me find my purpose. Currently, I'm the Director of Client Services for Rossa Legal. I have drafted over 1,500 expungement petitions since I've started, so I've learned a lot, and we are getting ready to expand nationwide. The attorney that I work with was actually my LDA when I got arrested, and we bonded and formed a friendship, and I've done a lot of stuff in the behavioral health space, and she is the attorney that passed the clean slate law here in Utah for automatic expungement so that people could have a second chance at getting their life back and clearing those criminal records. I've done a lot of work with legislation in the behavioral health space and with the clean slate Utah law. I understand the barriers that so many people go through, not just from the criminal justice system, that I experienced myself. We expect people to be rehabilitated. We expect people to just be sober, but yet we put all of these barriers in the way to make it impossible for them to even just find self-sufficiency. And so to be a part of that mission, it was everything for me. It's everything that I wanted to do, and I saw, my chance to be able to be a part of something that gives back. I'm a person who will show up for you when needed. I'm a person that loves excitement, loves adventure. I love to be in the outdoors. Born and raised in Utah. Had a great childhood. Went to school, got straight A's, got married in my church. I did everything right. I had a career. I was in the mortgage industry up until 37 years old. I was married for 5 years, and that is when everything in my life changed. My marriage consisted of domestic violence, and I was going through a divorce, and during this time my mother committed suicide after 6 previous attempts. Everything changed for me. My perfect little world, my safety net was just gone. My ex-husband ended up absconding with my kids out of state, and I had 12-foot surgeries. I was prescribed an extreme amount of Oxycontins, 5 30-milligram Oxycontins a day for a year and a half. I built a dependency upon this medication. I knew what it did. I felt like Superwoman on it. I was going through a lot of emotional trauma, and I started treating that emotional trauma with the pills, and that is when I, myself, turned this into an addiction. Once my children were taken out of state, I just lost all hope. Here I was, 37 years old, my kids are gone. I have a severe addiction to opiates, and I'm all alone, and I broke. Can't work and pay $80 a pill for Oxycontin, and so I started seeking other resources to not have to go through that withdrawal, to treat my emotional trauma. And that first $10 bag of heroin came, and it was over. I was literally on the streets, homeless for 2 years, with no hope, with no desire to live, 2 overdoses, literally on a street corner, just waiting for my day to die. And that was the hardest thing I've ever had to go through. You know, you get so lost in your hopelessness, you get so lost in your worthlessness, and you just think, how am I gonna get out of this, and who's gonna want me when I do? So 7 different times in jail, in and out, and just released back into my addiction, charge after charge, and all I needed was help. Every time I asked for help, I was told I was not good enough or I was not worth it, you know? Not directly, but the way that the system and the access was, I mean, it's hard to not feel that way when you're already feeling like you don't matter to begin with. To my own blessing, Utah did a program called Operation Rio Grande, which opened up programs for me to get treatment. And so the 7th time I was arrested, they arrested about 2,500 of us within a week span. And this time was different. They gave me the very last bed at House of Hope. They had 1 bed left at House of Hope, and I decided to go. House of Hope was the right place for me because I needed a safe space to be able to talk about where my pain was, where my true trauma was, in an environment that I didn't feel judged, and in a space where I never would have put myself. It was a very vulnerable place for me to be, but it was exactly where I needed to be. It wasn't until I had to go through being homeless, being judged, being less than, being viewed as less than, and going through that most humbling experience and truly finding out who I am as a person, because before then I didn't know. That changed me forever. For people showing up for me that didn't need to show up for me, for people giving a piece of themselves so that I could find hope again. How do you replace that? I've never had another individual call me out on such a real, loving level than I did when I was in treatment, and it broke through barriers. There was nothing more powerful than those women in that center that embraced me. That's what matters. You know, that's what life is about, is seeing another human being as an equal regardless of how dark their story is and regardless of how low that they are. And that is what I found at House of Hope. I like everything about myself now. I mean, honestly, I can't tell you how many times I look in the mirror and I'm just proud of what I see. For the first time, I am comfortable with who I am. For the first time, I can actually say that I live with integrity. I have an intent every day to just be the most authentic, honest person that I can be and give back that it doesn't benefit myself. That's the first time in my life I've ever not had a motive. And to live your life without motives, of just being able to truly try to make a difference in somebody else's life, that has given me the biggest reward of anything I've ever been able to do. I've never liked myself as much as I have today, and I've never had real connections like I've had today. Dude, I was out here 2 years homeless, went into treatment, worked for treatment centers, got 3 degrees since then. I just got licensed as a substance use counselor. I worked for a law firm doing expungements. All I had to do was just walk through those doors though, girl. That's it. If you're willing to walk through those doors, let the treatment center do the rest. I talk to a lot of people in recovery and I tell them, if I could go back, I wouldn't change a thing. I am so grateful that I went through what I went through. Would I take back the pain that it caused my children? 100%. 100%. That's the only thing I would take back. I wouldn't take back the homelessness. I wouldn't take back the humility. I wouldn't take back being looked down upon. I wouldn't take back the addiction. Thank God I didn't die. But that experience has given me more power into the person that I am today, because I'm not what I've done. I'm everything I overcome, right? And for 1 second, that 1 second that I made that decision that I was enough, now I get to show up and help people find that for themselves. Like, what better life could you live? What more purpose could you fulfill every day? To be able to say, I was enough and you're enough.
My name's Heidi Lund, and this is my story of hope. I'm very outgoing, not scared to say what's on my mind, and I usually get told everyone can hear my laugh from like a mile away. The thing I'm most proud of in my life is my ability to advocate for others, to use my voice and my experience in a way that not only can I get paid for it, but it also helps create change within the system. I love House of Hope. I'm sure. I am the Community Outreach and Housing Supervisor. I love community engagement. And then I also do our housing. So I opened our first sober living, which is Amaryllis Recovery House. I love working with clients, so this is my niche. And I want them to understand their potential. Every day I walk into work and I feel very humbled to be here. And just watching the other women fight the process and then accept the process is very rewarding. It's pretty awesome that my whole experience as a child and as a parent with my kids when they were younger has gotten me to where I am today. My dad was killed when I was 3 years old. When he passed away, my mom turned to drugs to cope with his death. That's kind of just how I grew up, in addiction with my mom. As a kid, it was very normal to see large amounts of meth around the house. I was a full-blown meth addict by the time I was 12. My mom ended up going to prison when I was 14. I moved out on my own after that, selling drugs, running the streets. Somebody told me about a doctor that you could make a lot of money from. If you paid him $120, he'd give you prescriptions that you wanted. And so when I started taking those, it immediately took over me. Sounds crazy, but I felt like I had a lot of control over the meth. I didn't with pain pills. That's when my whole life was just in complete shambles pretty quick. I had my daughter when I was 23. My OBGYN was prescribing me pain pills. When my daughter was 2 years old, I had my son. And when my son was 11 months old, he got a hold of meth. And it literally almost killed him. He was taken up to primary children's, and that's when DCFS got involved in my life. I'd never had anything like that in my life, like all these people telling me what I needed to do or what I had to do. I grew up with no kind of structure. Now I had to answer to this whole other system. Finally, I was able to check into detox, and from there I was picked up by House of Hope. I had all these commitments to myself and to my kids that we were gonna have this different life and everything like that, and I was sober for about 6 months, and then I had an abscess tooth. And I remember the exact time that I relapsed and just realized how big of a drug addict I was. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, my face is out to here, and I called my mom. And she's like, oh, I have a pain pill. And immediately, without even thinking twice, I immediately went to, how am I gonna get more pain pills? It was before I even took the pain pill. That day, my life changed. I went really hard. I started committing a lot of crimes. I racked up 12 felonies in 2 years. I was in survival mode. Me and my kids were homeless. We were living in hotels. I was selling drugs. I finally realized that I wanted something different. Like there was just something that happened within me that clicked. It's like, I want a different life. The one thing I did get from House of Hope the first time is I knew where to go if I did want to get help. When I was in treatment, I learned how to laugh. So I lived with a whole bunch of women in a house. We had like 15 kids that were in our house, and we're all trying to parent sober, brand new. We don't know what we're doing. But we were sitting in the kitchen one night trying to cook something, and I just started busting up laughing, like tears in my eyes, laughing. And I remember laying in bed that night like, this is what happiness feels like. I can't believe I've never felt that, or I didn't remember feeling it. It taught me how to be accountable. It taught me how to live a life that I didn't know was possible. Staff believing in you was one of the first times I've ever experienced something like that. House of Hope helped create the person I am today, and so it's really cool to be on the other side of it. I've had a goal since I've been sober and working in this field that I would go back to work for every agency that ever helped me on my journey, and House of Hope was my last one. My whole job with DCFS was to assist the parents through the DCFS process, and my office was actually in the same DCFS office that took my kids. I started there, parents with lived experience, so now all the DCFS offices around Salt Lake now have somebody working in their office, specifically with that background. I sit on multiple different committees throughout Utah and on the national level, and they pay me to come speak to them. So we go to these different conferences and speak on our lived experience and how other organizations can implement using lived experience in their work. It's crazy, the top of the DCFS chain that I'm in regular contact with, asking me advice, going to the jail to speak and not to be booked in is a very cool feeling. My daughter's 17 and my son's 15. My daughter graduated a year early from high school. She got accepted with a full ride scholarship to Southern Utah University, and she's going to be a business accountant to get her degree. My son is Cordell, and he's 15. He plays football for high school. He has never been in trouble. They're both just really good kids. They're starting not even to remember what it was like in my addiction. For me growing up, I didn't know people could live a different life. My biggest goal for them is wanting them to know that they have choices. And so to be able to provide this for them now it's really cool. It's just crazy, the life I live now. Like, people come to me offering me jobs, all because of my experiences and how I've learned to use those manipulation skills for the good.
My name is Kayla Jensen, and this is my story of hope. I would describe myself as unique, as resilient, as strong, as capable, as intelligent. I would define myself as someone who will continue to try. I've been through a lot of different obstacles in life, and I've overcome a lot of different trials in my life, and I am succeeding. I keep pushing forward. I've been married for almost 4 years. I have a beautiful daughter who will be starting kindergarten next month, and I have a son who will be 2 in February. We have this really great relationship where we can communicate, and we've built this life. I work at USERA, which is Utah Support Advocates for Recovery Awareness. I'm the Recovery Support Services team lead. Being able to show up in a courtroom where I had been there for choices of my own, getting consequences. It's the most amazing thing to be able to go in and show where I'm at today, and being able to advocate for families, for couples, for individuals that are in similar situations that I've been in. It's helped me overcome some of the thoughts that I had about myself, that I wasn't able to stand up and stand in my power to an authority figure. And now I'm able to go into a courtroom and sit down with judges and attorneys and people who had been involved with my court cases to say, hey, this is what I've been through and this is what I've done. Maybe we should look at this in a different manner. I'm a woman in long-term recovery. I started using substances at about age 15. I was really searching for acceptance. I was looking for people who wanted to be around me. That was something I had felt like I had been lacking. I never really felt like I fit in with anyone. And when I found someone in middle school who was willing to accept me, I latched on to that. And then I started using substances. It started with alcohol and pills. By the time I was in high school, I was using cocaine. Within a few months, I was using heroin. I started stealing. I started doing all these things that I didn't really know what any of the consequences were. I was so young and naive. I finally felt like someone wanted me. The hardest part of my use and my substance use, unfortunately, was not jail or prison. I got so used to being confined and being in a treatment center and being told what to do that it was normal to me. It felt comfortable, and that was an issue. That was the darkest part for me. Being out stealing and thieving and using substances all the time, that was harder than being in jail for me, because I knew that I had individuals out there who I could turn to, and I didn't love myself enough to do that. I thought all that I could do was be in jail, be incarcerated, be in treatment, or use. I didn't think there was a life outside of that, and that's really where that self-love was what I needed. I was charged with my first felony in 2007, and I was still in high school. And that's actually the first time I went to House of Hope. Then about 10 years later, after ending up in prison, I had my daughter. She was about 8 months old, and she was removed from my care. I knew that if I went to treatment, I knew something was gonna change. I just knew at this time. I had my daughter that I was now fighting for, so I sought help. I found someone who was going to be there to support me. Entering into that treatment center, it felt like home. I knew that I could walk in there, even though I wasn't there very long the first time, but I knew that I had people in there to support me. Going to treatment and going through the work, meeting with my therapist and advocating for myself and being challenged and being offered different supports, there's nothing like that. House of Hope gave me that. They also encouraged me to love myself and do things for myself, which I hadn't done really before. And so being able to stand in my choices and be authentic is also something I learned there. The Legacy Luncheon, that was probably the most impactful thing. I remember watching 4 individuals speak, and I remember wishing and hoping that one day I could be like them. I had just transitioned my daughter in about 2 weeks before that, and I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know if I could be a mom, if I wanted to be. I had all these conflicting feelings, and that gave me hope. 4 years later, I spoke at that Legacy Luncheon. I was able to be that inspiration to someone else. I accomplished that. I set that goal, and I was able to show up for that. And that's probably one of my best professional accomplishments, because I set that goal before even being in this field, and to know that somewhere inside of me that I had it in me to be that inspiring person is amazing. No matter what's going on in your life right now, you are worth it. You deserve recovery. You are worth that life. Whatever your goals are, you are worth it. Whatever you're fighting, whatever demons you're fighting, fight past them. Find your pathway. It doesn't have to be in a square box. You can make recovery work for you. You can do it. Doesn't matter how many times someone tells you no. Doesn't matter how many times you've told yourself no. You can do it. I am most proud of the fact that I've never given up, that I continue to learn and I continue to move forward, and I am growing and I am learning. I've been given opportunities that I'm taking advantage of. I'm being recognized and being acknowledged for the things that I'm doing well in the recovery community, and just completely changing my life. I bought a home, I have my children, I'm married, I've gone to school. I'm working on getting my record expunged and getting a pardon and just moving past that. The sky's the limit, because I never envisioned myself being where I am today, and in a few short years, here I am, and I am definitely excited to see where I'm going to be in the next 5 years. I know that I'll be in school with my daughter, taking her on field trips. I'll be in school with my son, doing the same thing. I'll still be showing up, and I will still be living a life of recovery.
My name's Mandy Cecita, and this is my story of hope. I would say the biggest way I could describe myself is I bring value. I bring value to people that I'm around and my relationships. I bring value to my community. I'm goofy and I'm sarcastic and I'm awkward, but I'm reliable and I'm motivated and I'm dependable. I work for the state of Utah, Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Services for People with Disabilities. I have a cosmetology degree. I also work for a place called Judicial Supervision Services, and I provide substance abuse counseling to inmates that are re-entering from federal prison. I also work as an independent consultant, so I work a lot with the juvenile courts and the child welfare courts, and I've worked with the University of Utah. I have 2 kids. They both live with a disability, so that's been a journey in itself. I'm so happy to say that my kids have never been in the cycle of abuse that I was in. 14, 15-year-old me could not envision who I am today. When I was 14, that's when I started my heavy substance use. And I never imagined, I never thought that this would be possible at all. My story on my journey to recovery starts the same as most people's story does, pretty much from birth. I was born into a family that had a lot of substance abuse and a lot of crime. I was put into situations as a youth that probably weren't the best, so I suffered a lot of abuse and a lot of trauma. To cope with it, I used substances. I used meth through my whole time in high school. When I had my first child, my son, he had a diagnosis of tuberous sclerosis complex. And since I didn't have any other coping skills, I turned to substance use once again, and this time it was opiates. And it was pretty bad. I remember laying on the couch and the TV would be on, and I would see like these reality shows, and these families are like getting together and they're doing things, and simple as waking up in the morning and being able to take a shower and get ready. And I couldn't do any of that unless I was high, unless I had my drug. I wanted what they had. I didn't have anybody in my life to show me what recovery looked like, but I had reality shows, and they really showed me what it looked like. I mean, this could be possible. You could do this. There are people out there that are living life totally sober. The moment that things really changed for me was I got a DUI with my children in the car, and DCFS was called, and my kids were removed from my custody just right then. So I went to my DCFS worker and I was like, this is my chance. I need residential treatment. And so she helped me get into House of Hope. And thank God, House of Hope's the one that worked for me out of everything else that I tried. I had no idea what to expect. I was thinking that you go in and they teach you how to not do drugs, and that is far from the opposite. It is a place where you learn about yourself, you learn about your thinking, you learn about your behaviors, you learn about what you need, what you want. It's really more of like a life school. They focused a lot on empowering and helping us build our self-efficacy. So I believed that I could do things. I was seeing myself accomplish things throughout the program, which really is carried out into my recovery, both of those, that accountability piece and that self-efficacy and belief in myself. There's a difference between recovery and sobriety. So recovery would be considered an action word, and sobriety is not. So if you're sober, you're sober. Recovery is you're taking steps to improve your life, whether it's substance-free or not. It could be tiny itty-bitty steps, and it can be big, huge leaps that you're taking. You're looking at your actions, your accountability. You're not being complacent, you're moving forward. Recovery takes action, and it takes work. To somebody that was actively using and considering reaching out for treatment, I would say there's no better time than today. This time's gonna pass regardless. You can always come up with a million reasons why not, but come up with one reason why and do it. This is it. This is your life. So, what are we gonna do with it? You're not alone. Let us walk the journey with you. I like a lot of things about myself. I like that I have a voice, and I like that I own my story. I like that I can empower other people, and I like that I empower myself daily. I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of everything that I've accomplished, and I like that I'm free and I'm living how I never thought could be possible.
My name is Mindy Vincent, and this is my story of hope. I've known since the day I was born, I was meant to do big things. I was born with a soul to fight. I have always had this feisty, spicy spirit about me to fight against injustices and things that I think are not fair or wrong in the world. So I have a master's in social work and a master's in public administration. I started the first legal syringe exchange in the state of Utah. I work all the time to pass legislation, and I'll continue to work and fight for people for the rest of my life. I am the founder and executive director of the Utah Harm Reduction Coalition. There's many ways that drugs can be harmful, and we try to eliminate or minimize as many of those harms as we possibly can. After my sister actually died from a heroin overdose, I decided that I could not watch one more person die. I started my own organization that doesn't have requirements around what recovery has to look like. When someone is dead, we can't help them ever again. That's it, you know? And so it's very important that we do everything we can to keep people alive so that they can find their recovery. You know, harm reduction isn't just about meeting people where they're at. It's about meeting them where they're at and not leaving them there.
I was out here 2 years homeless. What was super helpful was when Utah Harm Reduction Coalition would come down here. Extremely beneficial. A non-judgmental support from a group that just wants us to stay alive. Those were the things that mattered.
I began using drugs and alcohol when I was 12 or 13 years old. 15-year-old me probably didn't think we were going to get out of the system. Because when I was 15 years old, I was in state's custody and had been declared ungovernable. And right about that time is when I was running away, and I'd be emancipated soon after. So I was literally taking care of myself as a teenager. No one ever told me when I was little, like, what are you going to go to school for? Like, you know, it was just kind of assumed that I'd do some kind of just like clock in, clock out kind of thing. And I'm just meant for so much more. And I'm super glad that I got to find the path to lead me there. I was a meth addict for 17 years, and through that time, of course, my story is like so many others. I hit bottom after bottom. In the time that I was struggling with addiction, it wasn't so easy to go to treatment. You couldn't just show up somewhere and have funding and go to treatment. So I got involved in the criminal justice system, and through the criminal justice system, I was able to enter into treatment. The moment I walked into the House of Hope, just the energy that is there, it just feels like love. It's a beautiful thing when you have a lot of women together. The power of many women is very strong. And in the House of Hope, you're being held and loved by 50 other women who are going through the same thing you are. The process of recovery is so magical. And then when you add on to it just the love and care and support of somewhere like the House of Hope, there's just nothing better. When you're a parent, it's very hard to go into treatment because if you can't take your kids with you, what are you going to do with them? And on top of that, there's a huge fear that if you ever let your kids out of your custody, you're not going to get them back. And the House of Hope supports women in being parents and being a parent in recovery. When I had my son, he was the first thing in my whole life I ever truly loved. When I looked at him, it was the first time I ever cared about what happened to me, because if something happened to me, it would take me away from him. Through the House of Hope, I was able to get my son back. I'll choke up, but if it weren't for the House of Hope, I would not have my son back, and I wouldn't have gotten to raise him. My kids deserve the world, both of them. I think all women pray to have a man who loves them so perfectly. And God gave that to me and my son. Nick is my best friend. He is the rock in my life. He is the funniest person I know. And he's just everything that I think a true man is. He's a gentleman, he's respectful. Everybody who meets him loves him. He's the best. You know, I'm grateful my daughter's gotten to have a different life than Nick did. Drugs are not unfamiliar to either one of my kids. Even though my daughter has grown up with me in recovery all of her life, the work that I do exposes her to that. And that's a good thing, I think. I always want her to be on the right side of history and treating people who struggle with substance use just like anybody else who has struggles. Drug addiction is just a coping skill, just like everything else. It just happens to be a very rewarding one that has strong rewards in the brain. It's also one that's very reliable and dependable. When I take a substance, I know what it's going to do for me. No matter what the consequences, that payoff in that moment is everything that I need to make it through that day. But one of the things that the House of Hope taught me is that there was another way of life and that I could have it. So even though I did relapse, I knew that there was a better life waiting for me because the House of Hope showed that to me. And today, I am a ray of bright light for all who encounter me, and I get to be a tool of good in the world, and I get to love everybody right where they are and be an example of good to other people, and that's something I never even knew I could be. So if you are thinking about going to treatment, go to treatment. And if it doesn't work out there, go again, because you're worth it, you deserve it, you can do it, and the people in your life and your kids deserve it too. But most of all, you deserve it. You have no idea what's waiting for you. Makes me all tender.
When you see people overcome the odds and create something amazing with what's inside of them, there's just nothing like it. It's why I'll never stop working to find ways to help women change and help women rise through adversity, because I know that every single woman who walks through our door has that potential to create something amazing.